What's going on, guys? AFK Tech here, and today we're taking a look at the Dell R210 II. So the R210 is in Dell's 10th generation PowerEdge lineup, and today we're going to take a look at why I think that this may be one of the best bang for bucks to get yourself started into server gear. So I picked this server up off of eBay for about $210 plus a little bit of change in shipping. That's one thing you got to look out for when you're buying this used server gear, is it is heavy and it does cost a little bit to ship. So let's go ahead and get into the overview, starting with the back I/O. As you can see, we have a multitude of different ports. So we have a couple Ethernet ports, I have an add-in card there, a serial, VGA, eSATA, some USB, and a couple more gig NIC. And then from the other end you can see the power supply, and in the middle there next to the two NICs are some diagnostic buttons and lights. Alright, so let's go ahead and open up the R210. So the way you open it up is this push button tab right here. It has a Phillips head screw that you can lock and unlock the panel, just for a little bit of added security, as well as making sure that it is fully latched in place so that you're not going to accidentally slide the top panel off. So all you have to do is depress this and then slide. There's an extra place to put your finger over here if you can't get a good grip on it, and then the cover comes right off. So we'll take a quick look at the cover before we get into the actual inside. So it's got some pretty straightforward service information. This is something Dell does really well with color coding different things and labeling everything on the inside panel. This is something you'll see obviously more in server grade stuff, because not everybody that's going to be operating or repairing these machines are going to be 100% familiar with it. They're just going to have a general idea of how everything works in here, and they'll take a look at this to see exactly where some stuff are. So we'll go ahead and take that off. So you can now see the actual inside of the Dell R210. So you guys caught a couple glimpses of this in some of the B-roll that I shot. But I'm going to go ahead and go through some of the key features, and then we'll let you guys see that B-roll a little bit later. So you have two hard drive cages. So these are for 3.5-inch drives. They're pretty straightforward to remove. They got a quick little hot swap thing that allows you to slide it and pull it out. So you got one here and one there. So you have two 3.5-inch, and then you have a slimline DVD drive right here. One quick little tip and trick here is you're not really going to need that CD drive. A lot of your ISOs and stuff are going to be coming in off of flash drives, so what you can do is get a slimline to 2.5-inch drive bay. Allows you to put an SSD or another 2.5-inch hard drive in there. Currently I have a 2.5-inch drive just dangling down there. I might get a slimline. I'm not really sure yet if it's really worth it, because SSDs, this isn't going to be moved around a lot, and the SSD doesn't really need to be super secure. Some other quick features to note here. So you see the front panel motherboard right here. You have two internal USB ports. So a lot of people ask, why in the world would you need those? So a lot of hypervisors and things like that are allowed to be installed like ESXi on a USB drive. The idea behind that is why waste a full drive to just put an operating system on. So this allows you to put those USB drives inside the case, one, making it more secure, and two, preventing it from being potentially broken off the back of the chassis. So that's a pretty neat feature. I have ESXi on this right now, on this flash drive, so that's pretty cool. I wouldn't mind getting a smaller one, that way it's just not sticking out and I don't bump it ever if I am working on anything. So you see all the fans here. We'll do a little bit of a fan test here in a little bit so you guys can get an idea of what kind of noise this thing makes. So these are all easily removed. They just slide right out of these little these little brackets, and that allows you to change them if you have any that fail at any point. So then we'll move up to the motherboard area itself. So we have four DDR3 UDIMM slots here. So these are UDIMM, which is ECEC unregistered or unbuffered. They kind of interchange, depends on what DDR version you're talking about, but that's pretty much how everyone refers to them. So these are a little bit more expensive. So these they're not flooding on the market, because a lot of the stuff you see from decommissioned server gear is a registered memory. So tip for this, if you are buying a machine that does have UDIMMs, it's always best to get one that has a lot of memory installed already. One, for compatibility reasons. Two, price reasons. Usually you'll pay less in the price of paying more for that machine that has the more RAM than you would if you bought that RAM separately later on from eBay or wherever else you decide to source it from. So then I got 16 gigs of RAM in here, 4x4. Then we'll go to the processor area. So we got a heatsink here. It does have a small shroud that I didn't have on there. This right here, this kind of protects everything, and then also the key is it allows the air to be directed through the heatsink and past the DIMMs. That way it keeps it cool. So we have an E3 1240 V2, as I mentioned in here. That's a quad core with hyper-threading, so 8 threads are available to VMware to operate on as virtual CPUs. And then if you move over here, not much else over here. You got your power connectors, and then you have a riser card. So right now I have an Intel dual gig NIC in here, so that is just there to pass through to VMs. Other options you could put in here that you'll see is RAID cards. That's pretty much the only two PCIe devices that I can see being put in here outside of maybe a boot drive, SSD boot drive in the PCIe slot. But I wouldn't really recommend that because you can just put, a normal 2.5 inch in here, and then that'll keep that slot clear for something like this, since there's only 2 onboard NICs, depending on how many VMs you're going to have running that you want to have dedicated NICs for. Something to note with this is RAID is an option on these. Sometimes you'll see some of these with RAID cards in them, and I think that makes sense if you're going to get 2 high capacity drives here. But at the same time, I think that's the biggest downfall of the R210, is obviously it is a 1U compact form factor server from Dell, and so you're not going to have a ton of storage expandability, and that's something I'm already kind of thinking about running into. Is it, do I get 2 big 4 terabyte enterprise drives here and put them in here? Well, then I need a RAID card to get some good quality RAID 1, or will I set up a ZFS array? So it's a little bit tricky figuring that out. I think ultimately I will get 2 3 terabyte plus drives, put them in here, and then pass them through to one of the VMs as some sort of ZFS setup, and then keep the SSD for my miscellaneous VMs in one of the slimline adapters that I was talking about. So then outside of that, you have the ID rack over here. Just a little bit of background information on that. So that's pretty much Dell's remote management module. That allows you to do almost everything, if not everything, besides plugging cords into this, which obviously you couldn't do remotely, but you can boot the machine. You can get into BIOS. You can go to a console, so if you don't have VGA access to anything, you can go remote console in and get a screen on what's going on the server at that point in time. I was able to have my brother actually plug this in, put Ethernet jacks into everything, put the power on, walk away, and I was able to install everything on here. I got the DHCP address, I was able to remote in to the ID rack software, and I was able to do everything. Upload an ISO to install, and then get everything running right off the bat until I was able to switch over to the hypervisor's management console once that was installed. So that was something that was really cool for me. It's a cool experience where you don't have to be at the machine at all for any reason to be able to get it up and running. Outside of that, that pretty much covers everything on the inside. There's not a ton going on in here. It is very compact, but at the end of the day, you only have one PCIe slot, 4 or 5 SATA ports, which you need to note those are SATA 2 since this is a little bit older hardware, so those are only going to run at SATA 3 gigabytes per second. So that's just something to note if you're going to be running some high performance SSDs in here. So I wanted to go ahead and do a quick noise test for you guys. So something to note that when this machine does fire up, it is going to do a kind of a fan diagnostic phase, and that's where it's going to be really loud, and then you'll hear as it gets through the post process how loud it actually is. So we're going to go ahead and run that real quick. So you can get a general idea of what it sounds like here at the post phase. So it's not quiet. Those fans in there spun up pretty loud right now, but just give it a second to go through a little bit of posting, and you guys will see what its idle speed is. So that's full diagnostic mode, running the fans to full RPM. You can see the blue light kicked on there, indicating that it's getting past post. Now we're getting down to the actual idle speed. And we're now at idle. So as you can tell, this thing is pretty silent, especially considering it's a 1U chassis. They're usually pretty infamous for being really loud, but this is what it pretty much idles at. And unless you really peg it with a lot of processing that you're trying to do, this is usually what you're going to hear it at. So it's definitely something that would be completely suitable to have in like a little AV rack right next to your desk, or even on your desk for a temporary amount of time. I wouldn't want to have a rack mount server just laying on my desk like this, but that's something to think about too, especially if you don't have a rack like I do, or you don't have a place directly to put it right now. This would be a great way to get started into the actual server, into the server stuff, and you can have a good time with it without buying a bunch of other miscellaneous stuff. So that's just the sound test, so we'll kick back over to the main video. So outside of that, that's pretty much all I got for the R210. I definitely recommend looking out for the V2 processors in here, because the original ones, some of the earlier versions just have like the E3-1240, just V1 or no V at all. And the thing you're going to be missing out there is the single thread performance is a little bit worse. Multi-thread obviously is even a little bit more worse because multiplied over the cores. And then you're going to be able to save a little bit on power, just power to performance ratio, just because of that up in the performance. Also, another key thing to note is the E3-1220 for this. So you're going to see a ton of these on eBay with the E3-1220, 1220 V2. I would not recommend that personally, especially if you plan on using this with any sort of hypervisor, ESXi or anything, because that 1220 processor, whether it's the 1220 or the 1220 V2, does not have hyper-threading. So you're only going to have 4 cores, you're going to have 4 threads, which is kind of a killer if you're trying to run 8 VMs, for example, and you want to have each one have a dedicated thread that they can use. So that gives you a little bit more expandability if you do step up past that 1220 into the 1230 V2 or 1240 V2 like I have. If you guys have any questions, be sure to leave a comment down in the description. This is pretty much all I got for you. I definitely will be doing a little bit more with this, whether it's going to be the installation of ESXi, running you guys through that, setting up some VMs in there. I'm not quite sure yet. But I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you guys liked it, put a like on the video. If you didn't like it, dislike it. Let me know why down in the comments. And be sure you're subscribed. Also, something to look out for is I just set up a new website. So if you guys wanted to head over there and check it out, just give it a look and leave me a comment, a little bit of feedback down in the description. I had a couple posts over there that would give you guys something to think about. Thanks for checking me out. AFK Tech signing off.